Trusting God. Regardless of the challenges we face as Christians, we are to trust God to deliver us. Here's Dr. Gene Getz.
All of us have experienced challenging situations in our lives, but probably not like the challenge that the apostles are facing in this particular situation. They were in the midst of a fierce windstorm in the Sea of Galilee, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. So I've simply called this a severe challenge. And here's what we read in Mark 4, 37 to 38. A great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking over the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. And let me just simply say that the Sea of Galilee, even to this day, is noted for windstorms that come up very suddenly. And when they do, it creates a very difficult situation. The kind of situation the apostles were in nearly 2,000 years ago. Now we notice in this passage, we read, he, that is Jesus, was in the stern sleeping on the cushion. So they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to die?" Now, when I explored this passage a little bit, my mind went back to a very interesting thing that was developed or really discovered back in 1986. The Sea of Galilee was at a low ebb, and lo and behold, they discovered under the mud, actually, a boat that really goes back to the time of Jesus. Today in Israel, it's called the Jesus boat. And this is actually the size of the kind of boat that the disciples were in when they were out in the middle of the sea. And it was about ready to capsize, and actually about 27 feet long and about 7.5 feet wide. So that's not a huge boat. And probably were 13 men in it, if you can imagine. And so, understandably, they were concerned. And by the way, in finding this boat at the time of Jesus, actually, it's the kind of boat at the time of Jesus, they went through a very scientific procedure to dig this boat out and to encase it. And now if you go to Israel, you want to be sure to see it because it's in a special room where they are protecting it. And this is actually a picture of that room. Some of you in this room have been there with us as we've seen this particular boat. But here they are in the middle of the sea. And of course, Jesus calmed the storm, and then he asked them two very penetrating questions. Then he said to them, "Why are you fearful? Do you still have no faith?" Now, I think just to add to our sense of security, if we were in this situation, it would be pretty hard to believe and to trust. But remember now, these men had already seen Jesus work many miracles. They had seen him heal the sick. And so they knew there was something unique about Jesus, but the fact is they still didn't understand who he really was and is. John later wrote, and it'd be about 60 years after this when he wrote, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And all things were created by him," Jesus Christ. He was God. And of course, for him to still the storm was simple compared with speaking the word and creating the universe. They didn't understand that. And so Jesus was very direct with them, having seen all these things that he had done. And he directs his question at them because this is one of the purposes of his miracles, particularly with these men, was to show them that he was God in the flesh. And so he says, "Why are you so fearful? Do you still have no faith?" Now, Jesus dealt with that situation, and the principle that we're dealing with here has to do with the fact that when we face challenges, we need to trust God. Well, The fact is that even though we may be trusting God, that doesn't mean that we're going to be delivered from all tragedy. Tragedy exists in this world, such as Christians, dedicated Christians, who are killed in earthquakes and car crashes and fires. In fact, at the very moment that we were considering this principle, I heard about some senior citizens who love Jesus Christ in a bus in a head-on collision with a pickup truck, and 12 of them were killed. They were going home from a Bible study. There are tragedies in this world that we cannot explain. But the fact of the matter is that in the midst of tragedy, God still wants us to trust Him. That's what Job said when he went through the horrible trials that he went through. When his wife said, "Curse God and die," and he said, "Though He slay me, yet I will trust Him." And this is what this principle really is all about. Here's an eternal perspective from the author of Hebrews in the midst of life here on this earth. We read in Hebrews 13, "Keep your life free from the love of money." Now here is just one illustration because money is the basis of our security in terms of meeting our needs. And what the Hebrew author is saying is that don't put your trust in money, put your trust in God. Now we need money, but we shouldn't try to accumulate money just because we're insecure in this life, because that will fail us. That's not going to guarantee eternal life. It's not going to guarantee that we're free from tragedy or free from all the problems that come our way. So he says, as one illustration, keep your life free from love of money. Be satisfied with what you have, for He Himself has said, "I will never leave you or abandon you." And that statement, that promise can be applied to everything that we face in this life. Therefore, we continue to read here in Hebrews, we may boldly say, "The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me?" Well, man can do a lot to us, but they can take our life, but they can't take our soul. And ultimately, this is what the Apostle Paul was saying when he wrote to the Philippians from a Roman prison, his first imprisonment. And he wrote these words, chained to a Roman guard there in Rome. "My expectation and hope is that I will not be ashamed about anything, but that now as always, with all courage, Christ will be highly honored in my body, whether by life or by death." And then he said this, which is a powerful statement. "For me, to live is Christ, to die is gain." What an incredible example of faith in the midst of tragedy. Now, the Lord did deliver him from that first imprisonment for a period of time until he went back into prison. And this time he lost his life. He was martyred by Nero. But what he is saying here is that no matter what, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. And what a powerful, powerful statement coming from the Apostle Paul, who illustrates really what Jesus is talking about when he was talking to the apostles, and in application to all of us, regardless of the circumstances that we face in life. Now here's an interesting question, I think, for application. That is, how does the Old Testament story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego illustrate this principle? Well, you remember, they were taken into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar along with Daniel. And they were taught, they were encouraged, they were chosen. God blessed them, honored them, and they had high official positions even as young men within the Babylonian territory. Now, something happened along the way, and that is that Nebuchadnezzar decided he's going to build this huge, huge statue, which is over 90 feet high, out there in this plain. And along with that, he decided that when the music began to play, everybody had to bow down to this statue. Now, we don't know exactly whether this was a statue of Nebuchadnezzar himself, whether it was a statue of some of their gods. We're not sure what it looked like. We're not told. But those who would not bow down were in danger of fire, in the sense that they would be thrown into this incredible furnace of fire. So Nebuchadnezzar is one of those crazy moods that he got into, but this put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in a very difficult position. Now, we don't know where Daniel was at this point. He was somewhere that wasn't affected by this. But these three friends had a very significant decision to make. Are they going to bow down, or are they going to refuse and face death? Well, they chose, and you know the story, not to bow down. So here we have the record of that. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, because what happened is Nebuchadnezzar called them in. When he heard that they wouldn't do that, he said, "Are you not willing to bow down? Why are you doing this?" And basically, they responded to the king, "We don't need to give you an answer to this question. If the God we serve exists," and when they were saying that, they were not saying, "We doubt whether he exists," or "We're not sure if he exists." They were sure that he exists, but they put it in this form: if the God we serve exists, then he can rescue us from the furnace of blazing fire. This is the God we believe in, Mr. King. And he can rescue us from the power of you, the king, but even if he does not rescue us, we want you as king to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the gold statue you set up. An incredible statement of faith in relationship to what happened. And you know the end of the story. In this case, God chose to rescue them, because when the king looked into that furnace, he saw 4 men. And one, we believe, definitely was an Old Testament revelation of Jesus Christ himself, protecting these men. God chose to deliver them. Now, there are many Christians who face temptations and problems and challenges and face death. This has been true throughout history, even true today. But the testimony is a great testimony by Christians today. And I could only pray that I might have the courage to do what some Christians do today when they face death because of their faith in Jesus Christ. I can only say that I would pray that I could have that kind of faith. Well, here's the principle that applies to every situation. Regardless of the challenges we face as Christians, we are to trust God to deliver us.